Our city administrator.
Thank you. Yes, the meeting Des Moines Friday was to update the Iowa Economic Development Authority Board on our project status relative to the changes they were looking at making based on the Gatehouse Capital proposal. We presented the information. David Rashi was there, the Gatehouse Capital developer. Also had John Kubeck, who's with Leadership North Iowa, and also Delana Bars, who's with Mason City Foundation, which is Music Man Square. We gave about a 10-minute presentation and answered questions for about 15 minutes on our proposal. The comments that we received back at the end of the proposal were along the lines of, we support the project, we want you to continue to move forward. You've selected, you've now selected the developer, stick with it, get it done, move it forward. This time is of the essence in order to continue to move that forward. Comments were also made that we'll probably look at being rescored, which in parlance of the program means that they will be analyzing our information based on our proposal and determining a score as much as they did the first time with our project. They made comments that they actually think that our current project will probably score better than our original project based on the fact that it adds a convention center and improves our museum. They financed the project in Muscatine that was strictly a convention center and a hotel improvement. So they're already involved with these types of programs and they look at it fairly favorably. So that's where we expect that will go. It was a good meeting, but they obviously want to see us make progress. They made comments during Sioux Cities that we don't want to be still trying to work on this 6 months from now. Let's get it done. So they had questions about the election and what the process would be for getting that through. Provide a little bit of information on that, and obviously the newspaper reported on some of that. So overall, it was a fairly good presentation of the information, and now it's really getting down to the nitty-gritty details on what they're going to want to see from us going forward for details about this change, and so we'll begin to work on that now. As far as the Highline Trail, we're in the process of having negotiations with the owners of the trail that runs basically from 19th Street southeast all the way up to, well, basically past Lime Creek. Two owners of that property, Union Pacific Railroad and a company by the name of Backtrack. We're working with Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation to help us make those purchases. One of the pieces, Backtrack, has had an appraisal done, and we're starting the negotiations relative to the final purchase price. Union Pacific, they're in the process of hiring an appraiser for that, and then they'll do the appraisal, and that gives us a base value on what that should be purchased for, and then we'll begin negotiations with them. On the Quiet Zone project, we're making pretty good progress there. We sent in our plans and specs to the UP. UP looked at them. They had a couple of changes they wanted to see in the closures on 4th Street and 9th Street. And so we are providing that information back to them. We've approved the engineering agreement with them, which will basically just starts the ball rolling for the electronics being installed that connect the whole system along there as trains are coming through. And so they're in the process of getting that into the hopper for design and then installation. It's a first come, first served type thing as far as when that gets in as to when it actually gets done. So that's kind of where we're moving forward on that. We expect that once we get the final approvals back from them with regards to the design of the closures, the median parts that will go for those areas where the crossings will continue, we'll actually begin construction on those as soon as we get approval. We've already got a contractor hired, and it's just a matter of getting the final approval on design, and then we'll be able to do the installation. So those will happen sometime in the next couple of months.
What kind of timeline on that, Brent, are we looking at?
Well, I don't know how soon we'll get the turnaround back from the UP. That's really the question mark. For us, once we get the final approval and we say go, and assuming favorable weather, our installation should take a month to a month and a half tops. It's a pretty simple process. The delineators, they bolt into the ground, into the pavement, set on the surface. There's a little bit of concrete that gets poured, so it's a pretty simple process. Then they'll tear out the streets where they, at 9th and 4th, put up the signs that show that it's a closed road, and the sidewalks will have stoppages on them too. And so those are the basic things that we'll have to install. It doesn't take too long. The amount of work is not great. So that's what we're moving forward on that. And the last one you had.
The strategic planning process.
Yeah, strategic planning process, and then you had one other construction project.
North 65.
DOT.
Oh, yeah, 65, North 65. In 2018, the state is going to do an overlay of the street, US 65, starting at 6th Street, which is Bertzel's, starting and going north all the way to 18th Street. They did already to that intersection where Wholesome is, their turn going to the baseball field. They did from there north, now they're going to do from Bertzel's to that point, and so it'll be repaved. They're putting in handicap crossings at each location, fixing some storm sewer intakes, and then probably the biggest thing is they're looking at a 3-lane roadway versus a 4-lane roadway, which is different, but it reduces traffic accidents by 47% according to their analysis, because it pulls to the center lane and allows traffic to go on by, and so they really feel that it's a much safer roadway. We'd also be able to remove the stop lights at 9th Street. We wouldn't need those on 9th Federal, because with having a turn lane, there's really no reason to need to stop the traffic. And having a protected turn lane to be able to make the turn to clear one lane of traffic and then move over and merge in. So better situation for that project. And then as we get going, if you want to answer questions on that later, we can. Turn it over to Chad, and he can talk about the strategic planning process.
Chad Streck is our Economic Development Director with the corridor.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll just touch base on Vision North Iowa real quick. This is the kind of the long-range strategic visioning process that we're working on for Mason City, Clear Lake, and the region. It started about 2 months ago, and really the phase we're in right now is kind of the economic assessment, background gathering, data collection, things of that nature, digging into the numbers, trying to gather some input through the survey. Hopefully people saw that. I think we had about 750 people participate in that. So we've been crunching all that information together, trying to put it all together as best we can to form that, just that base level of understanding. What are the numbers showing? What's that basic qualitative information from the public on their feelings? If you saw the survey, we tried to keep that as open-ended as possible so people could say what they thought and what they felt. What do you love about North Iowa? What do you want to change about North Iowa? Things like that. We left it wide open. You could write a book about it if you wanted to, and some people did. Some people said two sentences. And that was all fine. We're just going through trying to review and analyze that as best we can to really draw the highlights and the most common themes, I guess, the overarching themes of what we're hearing through that process. So we've been working on all that. We're trying to collect it and put together. We'll have a document and some things that people can review here in the next month or so. And that'll all be pumped out through the city, through the websites. VisionNorthIowa.com is the website if you want to gather some information on that. How to get involved, you can come talk to me afterwards. If you want to get involved in the process at this point, please do. But in June is really when we're going to start more of the public input sessions, broad level, town hall, community type sessions, where really the point of that's going to be gathering and trying to develop kind of our consensus as a community, as a region, on our values, our priorities, where do we want to go, what are we trying to accomplish here in the next 5 years specifically. We can't plan. I mean, nobody knows what we're doing in 10 years, let alone 5, but 5 is kind of where we're going to try to get to. And start prioritizing, what do we want to work on, what kind of businesses, what kind of jobs should we be attracting, how do we work better and work more cohesively, and starting to identify whose role is where. What should the city be doing, what should the EDC do, the chambers, their community groups, community members, because we all know the city council can't do everything for us as community members. What can we do, and what should those things be? So we're really going to try to prioritize. One of the real things that we have tasked our consultants with is developing kind of an overarching view of who's doing what in our community right now, whether it's workforce activities, because one of the key things we've identified, or I don't think it's a surprise, but population and aging population. Our numbers have gone down, so that concerns a lot of people. What do we do about it? Do we want to address it? How do we want to address it? And who's going to do what in that? Same thing for business and things of that nature. So, like I said, we're about 2 months into it. We're really going to get into the community parts here in the next 2 months and try to ramp that all up and build up as much as we can. Kind of hoping to get through this in about September, October. Kind of the timeline we're working on. We're going to take as much time though as it takes. If we're missing something, we'll keep going until we get it right. So the time isn't super important as much as getting it right is. And I think we want to ensure that we have the path charted forward and we have people working together to get there. So that's a real quick overview. Happy to answer questions as we go. Excuse me, been fighting a cold too.
Thank you, Chad, very much for that update. Okay,
I'd like to know in simple language, what's the liability to the taxpayers of Mason City? Is there a tax abatement on this? And what's the return on the investment? There's a lot of numbers being thrown out there and it's very confusing. Now, we'll take the Kensett people that had the Holiday Inn, okay?
right.
They tore it down. They put up a beautiful new, the Hampton over there. I don't think they asked the city for a damn dime.
We did give them tax abatements, and everything on that as well. We did do a development agreement on that.
Agree, but I mean, we didn't put out millions of dollars for them.
Be close to that.
Say what?
Be close to that.
It will be?
We'll address that in just a second, David. Be
Yeah, I
happy
hope
to.
so,
You bet.
because my
Good, yeah,
ex-mayor that I was talking to is, we had quite a discussion.
sure.
And how we're paying for all these trails around town.
We'll get into that, David.
I heard, and I'm kind of confused a little bit too on some of this, $7 million extra of tax-paying money, it could be more, but, and then it's supposed to be paid back in a 20-year period, and I guess, one, I mean, what's the guarantee on that? And then two, how's it being paid back? I mean, I just guess I want to hear it broken down a little bit on that, and how much of our taxpayers' dollars is going to go for that. And like he said, the figures and the plans you guys have done for the return on that. So I guess I'm kind of like him, I want just a couple answers on this, with the money that will be invested.
Very good, thank you, Troy.
Veronica, I want to just pick up on the same kinds of things there. Seeking information about all the numbers. You already have a bunch of people who have dug in their heels without seeing much of anything, and that's, of course, predictable. But for the rest of us that are kind of just waiting out here and saying, what are the real numbers, what's involved, what's the time frame, all that kind of stuff. I know there's some public hearings that are scheduled, and anything you can do to clarify some of this stuff would be helpful.
Thank you, John.
At my age, it's easier getting down than it is. I just have a question. It's not a complaint or anything, but the mall was built, and part of building the mall was what it looked like as you were coming up 65. Now we're going to put something in front of that view, which will contain non-pretty stuff.
Gets to the architecture and the whole
Yeah,
design.
and I just wondered, originally, of course, we're not going with the other up by the city hall, but that would have been totally independent of anything else. I'm not sure what Mall of America looks like, because it's so huge. But I was thinking, if I was coming into town from the south and was coming to visit the mall, I first got to find it.
Right.
Because now there's a hotel and an over something or other.
Good points. Yeah, thank you.
Barb, John?
Yes, Barb, hi.
Hi. Earlier in April, there was an article in the Globe that referred to a couple of recommendations that had been made for certain members of the staff to get an increase in their salary. And there were several comments in the paper about pros and cons, et cetera, et cetera. But then towards the end of the article, it said that apparently someone, I'm assuming Mr. Trout, had proposed that there be a salary study for maybe the whole staff. I don't understand that part. But then it said in the next sentence that the council had refused to accept a salary study. So the question then revolves around why, and I guess that's the summation of it.
Sure. Thank you, Barb. Another good question. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, Dave Clayton.
Yeah, Dave.
Just to follow up on Barb's thing, I know Mark quite well, and he does an outstanding job. And I suppose the reason you turned it down maybe was it wasn't part of the budget process. But just from my work with him, communications and everything, if you look around Mason City and see all of the things that are going on that require engineering expertise, and he's a go-to guy, I think he's worth it, and that's just my thing for him. I wasn't going to say that had Barb not spoken. The thing I have a question about is, earlier this spring, we had an election. And the election basically said, let's save up some money so we can pay for some of these future needs and avoid interest. Sounds pretty good to me. I'd rather save up and buy a car than pay for it for 6 or 7 years or whatever it might be. My question is, if we can't sell a community on something that is that clear to me, how's this other going to work?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good, Dave. Thanks.
Good question.
Yeah, very good question.
Question.
Yes, go ahead, Will, and then Max.
Will Simmons. My first one, I guess, would be so this Alliant project that came through. I've spoken to some of my neighbors, and nobody knew that this was coming through. I'm on Pierce. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm up
Right
at
out here.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this project came right down Pierce, and I came home one day, and my entire front lawn was torn up because that's where it turns to go across the street. Obviously, that's city right of way. I have no problems with that. I feel like there was no communication between Alliant or Intercon or the city to us. And obviously, you guys can't go back in time and give us that notification. But I'm just wondering if you guys knew about it at a time, and if there's anything we can do in the future to help with that. And then I guess my second one would be, is there any plans by the administration to put out more information about the hotel project? There was an article today posted, I think it was a letter to the editor, and even I noticed some factual errors in it. So I don't know where a lot of people are getting their information, but if we want to get that 60% to pass, we're going to need a lot of FAQs put out there to give people information.
Thank you, Will. Thank you.
Thanks, Max. I got many questions, but I'll try to limit them. You got a meeting tomorrow night. I'm not sure what's on the agenda. I haven't checked. And then you also have a couple other special meetings coming up in the next month. I think one of those meetings involves giving the $150,000 up front to Gatehouse for their study to see if things match up and numbers work for them. I find it amusing almost when we have the election on November 7th, which the River City Renaissance could fall on its face. And they've said that if they get to build a hotel, they'll give the 150 back. But if they don't get to, they get to keep it. Now, why aren't you waiting till November 7th? They can't break ground before November 7th at all. If you took that plan to the bank, well, the loan officer would laugh you right out of the building.
it just wouldn't work. So I don't get that 150 grand up front you have to give them, and I won't even mention or ask for the details of the $400,000 Texas money that is now moved into the whole program, Brent. Secondly, the $25 million arena. Just a follow-up from the last board meeting that we had. Brent told us when I asked what would the operation of that be, he said around $665,000 a year. Now, I don't know if that included the hockey part of it. Their estimates are around $300,000. And so I like that, and what I asked then at that also as a follow-up, well, what's your revenue sources? And Brent at that time told us that we had the Parks and Rec coming in at $2,300 a month, and the hockey people were going to pay $1,600 a month. So that's $4,000 revenue on a $665,000 operation expense. Most kids could figure that out, that that's not going to work. So tonight my question would be, what are your revenue sources? What do you see? And also add into the fact that my conversation with Shane Cooney, the hockey president of the youth hockey, told me that he does not have a signed development agreement with you at all. It's just a letter of understanding. And I asked him if he had any conversations with anybody in staff, Brent, as to their control of the rink, the floor of the event center for 6 months. And he says, no, we haven't. And he did go on to tell me that there'll be no other use of that floor for 6 months other than hockey. They're not going to lose a day or 2 days or a weekend for entertainment, because that's what the battle is out there right now. They don't have enough time. They got to close up shop, you know, start a little late or early and late during the spring and fall. So knowing that, and also having read the Performa and the analysis, it looks like you have to have 60 events that raise $20,000 in revenue, mostly beer sales. And if you can't use the 6 months of the year, now you've got 6 months of the year to have those 60 events, which would be 10 events a month. At 2,000 people event, at an event 10 times a month. Listen, man, I've lived here all my life. Those types of numbers are not going up in our community. I don't think we're particularly doing anything wrong. We're just a Midwestern rural community. And I tried to talk to a few people, and I'm gonna go on the road with my act, but that doesn't work. Not with the competition we have at NIAC. And then I was disheartened to hear that the plan is you would either have to hire an entertainment director, the community would create a new position, or you'd hire somebody like VenueWorks, which we discussed with in 2011. Then I hear, no, it's going to be NIAC. Well, I got to tell you something. I said it at the other meeting. Every dollar we spend in the community has to be spent attracting the young people to come to our community. Don't worry about me, entertaining me. We have to keep our young people here and bring them here. And how many times can you see Lori Line? I'm just telling you. So that is an interest too. I have many, many other questions about the whole thing. And I'm just not getting them from the Globe, or from you guys, or even from these meetings. My questions kind of went unanswered there. So I'd like to know the revenue sources. I'd like to know about the 150. Why don't we wait till after the election? Just makes good sense. We could lose another 150. By the way, if we do lose that, that'll put us up to almost $1 million we've pissed away on this program over the last 3 years and 3 months. So I would just assume you'd be a little more careful with our tax dollars. And I'm not sure how this thing's going to work out. I'm not even sure if any of them have really read through the 54-page information that you've been given. Because if you did, I think you'd have many questions other than pushing this along at every council meeting, pushing forward, moving forward. And Travis, I got to say something to you. I've noticed over the last couple months, you've been questioning it a lot. You've been the only one who has got serious questions on the Performa and what are we doing there? But you also keep moving it forward. And here's the last thing I want to close, a little commentary. We have a lame duck council. Hell, we have a lame duck issue. It's been 3.5 years. We've got 4 council members, the mayor included, 3 council members, that are up for re-election this fall, 6 months away. If anybody had a brain and you'd understand about the things in the environment, about dumping water on other people's property, or the hindrance, or the nuisance things, well, you're encumbering a future majority of the council to see it your way. 4 new people could be elected, and they're gonna wake up, possibly, with a $38 million development that they might not necessarily agree. So, my comment would be, I would prefer that you just pull it off, because we're so close to a new council in the community, a new direction. And maybe we would get more bang for our buck. You guys have strived for many years now to pull this off. I learned something a long time ago. Watch out, you may get what you wish for. So, thank you.
Thank you, Max. Other chance to make it, yes, ma'am.
Cindy Barashak, I live on North Madison,
Yes, ma'am.
and I agree with Max 100%, but I just had comments about some of the houses up in the north end are really getting run down and are to the point that I would think they need to be condemned. And I have a whole list here, and I'd like,
Of addresses?
yeah,
Yeah, you could turn those.
We'll take
We'd
those.
love
I'd
to
like
take those.
something
Yeah,
to
please.
be done maybe about that. And then I wanted to say that I really appreciated the school crossing sign on 12th Street. The kids have a hard time getting across the street to go to that Monroe Park. The North End Partnership got a sign there posted kids crossing, but it hasn't slowed down the traffic too much. So I'd like that looked at again.
Can you speak to that, what we're talking there?
Well, my understanding is it'll be 10 to 15 years usually a minimum. A lot of it depends on how much milling they do and how thick the actual added pavement is. And I don't know the specs specifically, so I'd have to find out the specs in more
Okay.
detail. Project's not being done until 18, so
Yeah.
it'll be a little while, but I can find out.
On that, will there be more public information in terms of the 3 lanes and so forth as we move forward with this?
Well, that's, the council will be asked to approve it, and so there'll be basically an opportunity, we'll present some information at the council meeting prior to that, and we'll have to decide, depending on how council feels, whether or not we need to have more public input even before that.
Just to follow up to that, Brent, stone removal and such on 65 and 122 are the responsibility of the DOT.
Yeah.
Is this paving project going to be a city expense or a DOT expense?
It's a DOT expense completely. This particular project, with it being where it's being constructed, is 100% there.
Okay. So due to that, I would imagine we don't have much say on the design of it? As far
Well,
as the
not
3
necessarily. I mean, they don't want to come in a community and dictate. They'll try, but they'll try and do, and I've seen the information, is show you that really this is better for the community. If we truly have an issue with it and don't see the benefit, then they'll take that into consideration. They don't necessarily want to come in and dictate if they don't have to. And they prefer it to be something that we see the benefit of and will support. Sure.
Thanks.
And Kevin had another question on the motel, and I'm going to get into all the motel questions in just a second, but the second question was on the quiet zone proposal, and it had to do with this gentleman's sidewalk in that area. Can you respond to that?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact stretch of the sidewalk, but the sidewalk will come back. The sidewalk will be pushed back, and more than likely, I'm not sure, are you on the north side of 9?
Me?
Yeah,
I'm on the
Southeast corner.
west side of 9th.
on the west side of 9th, okay. They'll push it back more than likely to the railroad's right-of-way. So wherever the railroad's right-of-way starts is where likely the sidewalk will end. Because, as I mentioned, it won't be legal to cross that stretch anymore, and so it'll be pushed back to there. So wherever their right-of-way begins is likely where the sidewalk will end, and the city will do all of that. That'll be part of the project. We will remove all that sidewalk.
The
So-
entire section?
Yes.
Clear down to my driveway?
Probably up to your
No,
driveway.
no, right to the city,
To-
right to the railroad right away.
Can I remove the rest of it then?
I'll have to get with the engineer on what our requirements are, but more than likely, you probably could right to the edge of your sidewalk, but then from there out, it would be left.
From his driveway where his garage is, he should be able to take that all the way out up to the railroad track.
Right, I would believe, right
Should be able to
to
remove
your,
it all then?
to
I
your
would say
driveway.
so.
Yeah, I don't see why not, because it's not gonna be used anymore.
Well,
It's bad
if
anyway.
you-
It'll be just green space.
Pardon?
It'll be just green space.
right.
Yeah.
So the best answer is we can get you in touch with the city engineer, and he can give you the specs on exactly where.
Okay, appreciate that.
Doing that.
Okay.
The next question came in from Dave Gilbert, and it had to do with liability for the multi-purpose center and for the proposed gatehouse proposal. There's two bond issues that are being proposed there. One is for the multi-purpose arena, and one is for the gatehouse proposal. I mean, with a bond issue, if one of these projects would fail, the purpose of the bond issue is that the taxpayers would be responsible for that if it were not successful. That's the community backing that this provides. Is that correct in your?
Well, it's, the intent of the way the financing works is it won't be with general obligation bonds. It's going to be tax increment financing bonds. The total cost of the project, all components, is $18.75 million, but we have multiple sources of revenue that will come into the pot in order to pay for each of these projects. And so there's an ultimate backing of general obligation bond, but the way it's structured, that won't be required because we'll be having all of the other sources from the state. The new construction will have new value, new taxes that they're paying. They'll help pay off those bonds, plus the money we receive from donations, the county. All those things are going to be pulled together as part of the pot that's going to be used to pay off the bonds over the 20-year period.
There is also a statement made that the Hampton Inn received no.
No, the Hampton Inn received a 90% rebate of their property taxes for 10 years.
Yes.
I did simple, quick math here. That's about $1.86 million over 10 years.
1.8?
Which, with the proposal that we have from Gatehouse, their $4.3 million worth of mezzanine loan, interest-free, is to be about $1.4 million. So the actual hard dollar benefit that they'll receive will be about $1.4 million. Because at the end of the 20 years, they'll pay back $4.3 million.
But we will still have to pay back the interest.
Right, we'll pay the interest, which is to be about $1.4 million on the loan itself.
Here's something, and I've been hinting around it, and I haven't brought it up at a council meeting, or talked to even these two about it, but I've been hinting about it at the council meetings. There's going to be quite a bit of revenue when Mr. Rachi talks about bringing in 600 people 40 weeks out of the year. There could be up to about $4 million in revenues, and we get 7% hotel motel tax off of that. There's going to be a lot of increase off of that where I think there's opportunity to use, change the percentages of our 2080 agreement with Visit Mason City, where we can pay for that without encumbering that tax upon the taxpayers, and use $140,000 a year. There's your $1.4 million over 10 years time frame. Kind of like what we did with the library. I know Max was instrumental in that, where we're paying $70,000 a year off of hotel motel tax to help cover some of the library's expenses. It's an idea I've got. I've been waiting to put it on the agenda, but Max, I probably thinks it's a good idea.
It's purely speculative whether we can fill up 600 people.
I don't disagree, but if the numbers they're throwing at us and they're saying that's gonna hit,
It's my question tonight, Travis.
Then the money-
If you read 54 pages, the numbers you have thrown at us don't have a,
then the money should be there to help cover it.
it should be if that would be the case.
And Brent, going back to tax abatements, the way the deal with Gatehouse, and it's still early, so there's nothing that's been determined yet, but because of the interest we have to pay, there wouldn't be any room for tax abatements, right?
Right, there would be no tax rebate with the project with Gatehouse, because their financing incentive is going to be the non-interest payment on the loan. That's their actual incentive. And so they would not receive tax rebate as the Hampton Inn.
There were several questions regarding the preliminary development agreement with Gatehouse that we've begun to enter into. That's obviously in its very preliminary stages, but I think the questions alluded to what are we locked into at this point? What is our flexibility in terms of the exact location and in terms of alternate plans?
Well, alternate plans, there's still a lot of opportunity, and actually even Friday, when David Rachu and I were at the state, we were having discussions, looking at the map. They are looking at other alternatives. We're not set on his proposal that he presented. We have a lot of time to figure that out. You know, they're going to enter into the pre-development agreement and do the things that they need to do in their mind to figure out more information about what the numbers are going to be for their hotel, and get their financing and get some drawings done and some other types of architectural work. So that's stuff that they're going to be working on in this 90-day period. While that 90-day period is going on, we're going to be really locking down what the design should be and figuring that out. So it's not set in stone by any means as to where each of the components will go.
And I think that's one reason meetings like this are so important, and future community meetings on the project, so that we and the developer, and I think the developer is interested in hearing from the community in terms of what the project might look like. And that got into the design and the visual aspects of the mall and the potential of building a motel in the Southbridge Mall parking lot or near there, or in an area near there, and what kind of visual impact that would have on the mall. And that is a good question, and it's one that has to do with design, and it's something the city council will have some say in as we move forward. Let's see here. Okay, visual aspects. Barb had a question on the salary recommendations, and we're not going to talk about specific individuals here, but suffice it to say, I think that was a budget issue, number one, when we didn't do the survey. Is that right?
Yeah, I voted against it, and I brought it up because we just went through the budget. It was a rough, well, it wasn't really a rough budget, I shouldn't say that, but we were looking at a 5% increase in property taxes of citizens, and then we took reserves out of different funds to help overcome that for the course of the year. This came to us about 6 weeks after our budget process was done. I thought the timing of it was bad. I think we should have done it through the budget process. Not to say Mark Graham is not a valuable employee. I think the employees that were brought forward do a great job. But I just thought the timing was bad on it. And I also thought it would hurt the morale of other employees that work for the city, 240 other employees. If we singled out 2 employees and gave them a raise, and we didn't give everybody else a raise, because they all get their, what was it, 2.75% wage increases, and they also get their step level increases yearly as well. So they actually get 2 bonuses or wage increases, plus they have excellent wages and benefits. So it was nothing personal about the employees. I just thought the timing wasn't.
And I appreciate the time you took to explain that. And I must not have phrased the question accurately, but I was looking specifically at
The salary studies?
the salary study, and
I know that's been brought up for the 8 years, and I think even before when Max and probably the last
3 times it's been turned down.
10, 12 years. And we have other avenues. We can always look at other cities and compare what they are paying their employees and things like that. Actually, I feel our city employees are paid very well for what they get paid for here in Mason City. And again, we have a benefits package second to none as far as that goes, you know, with insurance programs and things like that. So I'm not against it, but I just think with our tight budget constraints, that paying that extra money for a salary study, I haven't been for it over the last 8 years.
so what is the amount that a salary study would reflect?
About 45,000
Minimum, yeah.
minimum.
But Travis, I've done some studies myself, just calling other cities, like seeing what Bill Stangler should make in other cities, and, I mean, we could do that ourselves, and, I mean, we are pretty well paid.
That's a slippery slope, you know, because something like Bill Stangler, he has different departments and things like that, but again, you try to look at the overall wages and benefits that they get, and I think we've been fair. You know, and what they get paid, so.
Perhaps, could you clarify one other thing on that subject?
Yeah.
I'm not quarreling with your decision at all, but what do you use for a base there? Do you look only at other cities in Iowa, or do you look across the border? Do you look through the Midwest?
I think predominantly that would be compared to the other cities in the state of Iowa, of towns comparable sizes, basically Clinton's,
Yeah.
the Fort Dodges.
We have about 8 cities, John, that are similar size that we compare ourselves to. Same with our union wages. We have specific cities that are similar size. Burlington, Fort Dodge, Ottumwa, sort of Cedar Falls occasionally, a little larger. Clinton, Muscatine, and those type cities.
And thank you. And the next question was from Will Simmons, and it was regarding the Alliant Energy project right out here on Pierce Avenue. We all noticed it when we drove in this morning, and we all know that that's caused a bottleneck on First Street and in this neighborhood. The answer is yes, we did get notification from Alliant through Brent at the city council meeting. I also think we probably did not do a good enough job in presenting that information as frequently as we should have in advance of that. But it leads to the Alliant Energy did brief City Council at our last City Council meeting, and they've got a lot of construction projects coming up this summer. We received a list of them. They were mentioned at the last City Council meeting, but plans are for this project to continue on south and cross Highway 122 this spring, and the time frame on that is
I don't know, remember the exact.
several
term.
months,
Yes.
at least, to complete
Will
that
that be shut
project.
down 122 at all, going west and east?
It goes north and south. Does it go east and west?
North and south, and then on east and west on 6th Street.
I think it's already crossed 122, but
Yeah.
you might want to look into that.
The great thing is that they're making a big investment in our community. They're employing a lot of people and have a brand-new facility down south by the industrial park now. But I think the Alliance is very, very well aware of the inconvenience that it causes along the way too, and wants to do a good job of notifying the community as we move forward on this.
Well, and that project will, just so you know, was supposed to be completed in December.
Yeah, they ran into trouble.
And they hit the granite and totally the directional
Yeah.
boring and everything
Yep.
that they went through. So it's been a nightmare.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
So,
Yeah.
I think one of his major points was, we want more information
Sure.
on everything.
Yes. Yeah.
It's nice that Alliant talked to you, but it wasn't your yard they tore up.
Right, exactly. That's a fair point, and that's what a meeting like this is all about, and that, you're absolutely right, we can never communicate too much, so that's a point well taken. And Will also made the point about future information on that hotel project as we move along, public meetings, citizen input. The role of our city staff is not to campaign. In fact, they're forbidden by law to campaign for a bond issue or in a city council election anyway. City council members are free to take positions and organize campaigns and things along those lines, as long as we don't use city resources to do that. And so in terms of the campaign for the River City Renaissance Project, there's no question that all of the people that are interested in that in the community will have to pull together in order to pass that. That's a high standard. 60% is a high standard. But after that's done, after we have that referendum in November, the community will have spoken, one way or the other. Mason City has a very successful track record on passing bond issues. The Mason City Public Library bond issue passed by a little over 60%. The bond issue for the Mason City swimming pool passed. And so we have a very good track record on that. But I have no fear of taking this issue before the voters, speaking just for myself. I mean, I think that's a great thing. I think we should do that. And members of the community that are interested in seeing this obviously offers great potential for the community. Members that are interested in seeing this passed, we will have to pull together and meet on a regular basis and work on getting that done. And in our role in city council and the city staff does have an obligation to communicate with all of you every step of the way. No doubt about it. Anything further on that?
Yeah, I got something on that. Brent and I have talked about this on the phone a couple of times, so I want to challenge him in public now, but we need to do something in a bigger setting to explain it, to get all the questions answered. And I know you can't campaign one way or the other, but we need to present the info, detailed, explain it thoroughly so people understand what they're voting on. And it can be intimidating in a city council setting to ask questions or get answers, so we need to move outside of that to an auditorium or a gymnasium where people can go and get a couple of three dates scheduled so we can work with people's schedule and really answer their questions and hear their concerns so they can make an informed decision when the referendum happens. So without campaigning or pushing the needle one way or the other, I think it's something that is vital to get the issue to pass, is to get the information out there.
One thing I think you need to do is listen carefully and get out in front of fake news. There's plenty of that. I've heard some of it tonight.
And we have to make sure we have
And
solid information.
That's right. Be as transparent as you possibly can. You know, be honest even if it isn't pleasant. I mean, that's, you know, I'd much rather have someone tell me something I don't want to hear, but if they're telling the truth, I'd rather have that than the other. People will respond to that. And, I mean, there are risks with anything you do. And in the past, Mason City's taken some risks, and we might say the mall failed, but it's been there 45 years, and for the most part, I remember Mason City when I came here and what was there. You really do have to invest, and it's, in my case, it'd most likely be paying it forward, but I think we need to do that. And I just feel like Mason City is just kind of on the cusp of doing something very worthwhile. But the people are going to vote, and they're going to vote their conscience, and may agree or disagree. But I think if they can be dealt a fair hand, and these are the facts, and there's no back channel stuff going on, I think that's what you need to do. I think that's what the community needs to do.
Thank you, Dave. There was a question from Russ regarding the multi-purpose arena and why we're making a private investment, why we're making a public investment in a private facility like the mall. The $10 million that Brent was talking to the state about, one of the requirements is that there be a certain level of private investment, and that's one of the reasons the mall is a component to this project. Is that not
right? There has to be two things. I mean, we have to have a major project such as the arena. We also have to have the private investment of the hotel. It has to be over $10 million. So there has to be that kind of a project component in order for it to go forward.
But that's the only private investment is the hotel, and that gives you, the Renaissance fulfills its need. The mall itself is not investing anything. He has to put a new roof on right now and take care of a couple stores' furnaces, but that's the public. So I think Russ has got a good point. We're gonna give 18.7 million with the pavilion and the arena to Mike Cohan of Great Neck, New York, and we're gonna turn around and rent it from him over 20 years for $5 million.
Right.
So I mean,
Max, we're going to stick with responses here. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Brent.
Well, the issue is if we didn't do it that way, we'd all raise our property taxes. And with the ability that we have by utilizing TIF dollars and the grant and the state money, we're able to do this without raising property taxes.
the front end, Brent, my questions tonight, none of them have been answered. It's 8 o'clock.
Brent.
And mine is a revenue issue.
Max, you've asked your questions, we're going to get to the answers. One of the questions you had was the exact sources of revenue for the multi-purpose arena.
For the operating revenues, you'll have a arena fee, you'll have beer sales, you'll have concession sales, you'll have rental fees that will be paid by youth hockey, you'll have rental fees paid by those that utilize the facility, and I think that's the primary, those are the primary ones. There might be some other ones.
You told me that last time, and it added up to just over $4,000 a month.
No, it's way more than that. No, way more than that.
as the expense change, the overhead of the facility for the year? You mentioned 600.
No, it matches the pro forma that we've done.
1.3
Revenues,
million?
the revenues are right around 665,000, that's what the expenses are. And that includes a full-time director.
My second question, Bill? You have it? These 60 events in 6 months?
I
10
can
events.
answer on that, my take on that if you want.
Your
Go ahead,
take?
go ahead, please, Travis.
With relative, I haven't talked to Shane Cooney, but I think if we're gonna move forward with this project, youth hockey can't control it for 6 months out of the year. There has to be some give and take, as far as that goes.
Then
There
there's no
will-
deal.
Listen, hold it. Stand up, would you, Deb? I want to hear that, what you just said.
There's no deal if Mason City Youth Hockey doesn't get that arena for 6 months out of the year, period, end
Boom.
of story.
So Shane Cooney told me.
You haven't negotiated this?
Well, we're not gonna go
We haven't
negotiate the
negotiated.
project right here. There's-
I was told that we would have the same access to ice that is out at the arena. That's 6 months, no one else is in there because
Nothing.
Mason, so those are all things to discuss.
Right, we're gonna continue that
So
discussion.
when are you going to discuss it? You're already moving forward.
And can I ask
Yeah,
another
please,
question
Deb.
then too?
Yeah.
Has that operations and feasibility for that arena changed since the high school has decided to build a gym? Because I know some of the things they talked about were bringing these tournaments in, but now I understand from talking to a school board member that they are building a gym, and those activities were, I believe, originally planned to be in the multipurpose center. So that
I would clarify
changes.
just one point.
Yeah,
They have not made that decision. I'm not jumping into things, but I can tell you they have not made a decision to build a new gym. I can tell you there are some folks who want to have additional gym or gyms, but the board has not okayed any of that.
Okay. So, but it's up for
And obviously, that
discussion,
would
and
have to
needs to
be
be,
factored in
right.
if the board does proceed
And,
with that.
and
Yeah.
the youth hockey piece, I think is crucial that that's clarified and clear.
Yeah, but if you don't get the deal, like you just said,
Mhm.
then how are you gonna, you're already gonna have to redo the rink and everything else.
Then we'll redo the.
They'll do that,
We can do that.
which is very feasible if you do that.
Sure.
Those numbers are really, that's just around $1 million, not 18 million for, and they have it all.
And I'd be okay with that if it's.
Well, then, good, we need to talk about that
Yeah, that needs to be clarified.
much before you give, Bill, my third question, the 150 grand up front here in the next couple of weeks. I don't understand why you're doing that. Justify that to us, council members. Seriously, 150 for them to do a feasibility study. Hey, if I wanted to build something, I'd have to go to the Development Review Committee, and it's all up to me to provide you with all that information, how it's gonna work out on that piece of ground I wanna develop. Why are we paying them that? A large $100 million corporation, Gatehouse, from what is it, Fort Worth, Texas, and the offices in Minneapolis, and they bragged about how many they built in convention centers. Why would we have to pay 150?
Well, everything in the development agreement is under negotiation right now, and they say the 150,000 is their standard practice in communities that they work with. And so that's what we're looking at.
We want you to tell them that our standard practice here by the citizens is not giving our money away. If we lose on that, that'll be close to $1 million invested from this community of tax dollars.
Well, I don't think your number's accurate, Max, on $1
Really?
million.
I'd be glad to meet with you. I've offered myself up to all of you to meet with me. Paul, I've asked you to meet with me.
All right.
That was my question. He's the one that made that offer at the meeting, and there hasn't been boo about that suggestion.
About which suggestion, Kevin?
Having the hotel
A new horse arena and
south
a new
of Music Man
hockey
Square
arena for less than
instead of
$3
in the
million.
parking lot,
Well, that's,
and that he could save the city, what'd you say, 26 million?
23 million,
23 million.
but no one's hearing us.
well, the exact location of the motel is still negotiable. That's not a settled, that's not a settled thing at this point.
Well, it seems to me you'd jump at the chance to save 23 million, or at least look at it.
We had a question on the condition of streets in Mason City, and we're after, it's after 8 o'clock, so I want to make sure we get a response on that. What are our street plans for repair this spring ground?
Well, we approved a $1 million street rehabilitation project that, or it's in draft, it will be approved by council. So there's a major project that'll happen within the community regarding attacking some of these streets. We're also looking at 12th Street Northeast, for example, is one of the ones that will be looked at for 2 years from now. And then there's a number of other, we'll do some sidewalks, some street patching, which the street patching occurs throughout town. So there are a number of places, it's too long to list, I don't have the list with me. But, you know, locations where there's broken concrete, where we core out the bad parts and put new in. And so there's a number of locations. So there's quite a bit of work that will be done this year. And it was put off for a while because you mentioned the trails, but that was a decision that we made relative to the funding that we had available.
Who made that decision to
City
spend?
Council.
I never heard that they were gonna spend
It was
over
through-
$2 million.
No, it was through the whole budget process that the city did.
Bill?
I'm going to go to Paul and Travis for any final remarks.
Bill, just one thing before you do that.
Troy.
I keep hearing 8 o'clock, but hang on. There are some really good questions. My question is, do you three have to be somewhere? I mean, like at 8:30 or something, or what's going on?
We're gonna, it's
I mean,
out of courtesy.
you get at 8 o'clock, there's some good questions.
Troy, we said 7 to 8 o'clock, so it's a courtesy to everybody here that we stick to that. We're going to stick around afterward, but I'm going to let Paul and Travis go ahead and make their final comments.
Brent, I just have a final question. It actually got a lot of people talking 3 or 4 weeks ago when it was reported. Do you have an update from G8 or Phil Choder on what their plans are for a hotel?
The last I heard, Mr. Choder said he was planning to build down on Highway 122 in Federal. I haven't heard anything further. That's the last that I heard.
Just east of
Yeah, just east of the S-Way.
Mechanical here was.
Is he on the development review for May, Brent?
No.
Do you have anything further, Travis?
Just one question for Brent, but going back to Ms. Bartasek, I think she talked about the 12th Street crossing in Monroe Park. When we close down the 9th Street crossing, are we looking at, again, I don't like to slow traffic down any more than anybody else does, but that's gonna make Monroe and 12th Street Northwest almost unbearable for the people turning off Monroe to get on 12th Street. Are we looking at possibly some sort of
Slowing devices or something?
well, not slowing device, and it may be a street light or something, because if you're gonna be turning left off of Monroe going west on 12th Street, and the cars coming over and traffic coming east to west on 12th, they're gonna be bottlenecked up there as a result of that.
It already is.
And you're correct, it already is.
Shift
So
change.
If we
Yeah,
knock that,
we've
take
had
that
some
9th Street.
internal discussions about needing to do that, so that's.
And even now, I know, I use that quite a bit, but the 9th Street crossing, 60% of the time is already blocked by a train, so it's already, makes it hard to get across.
It's a tough
I'll have to-
intersection.
Yeah, it is a tough one.
I'm not exactly sure when, but I'll talk to you when we'll look at that, but I'll get with Mark on that.
I'd like to thank Councilman Paul Adams and Travis Higgy for being with us this evening. Most of all, I'd like to thank all of you. We'll stick around afterward to continue the conversation, and we'll be holding more neighborhood listening posts as well. I'd be remiss if we did not thank Pastor Paul Collier for hosting us this evening here at First Presbyterian. Pastor Paul, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.